আচ্ছা, এটা ভিজিবল এই পার্টটা?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
ঠিক আছে, তাহলে শুরু করছি। আচ্ছা, লাস্ট ডেতে তাহলে আমরা অলরেডি কমপ্লিট করেছি ওই পুরো সেকশনটা আর কি। দ্যাট মিন্স ওয়ার্ডসওয়ার্থিয়ান থিওরি, the basic representation of the poetic self, the differences between the three particular stages of mind. Okay, or maybe if you think in terms of poetic imagination and how it works in the construction of the poetry or construction of the poem, all these have been taken in consideration in my last class. So now it is the last part of this poem. It is not very tough section actually. The main tough section has been already been covered. Here you will find a particular reference to, you know, that is the sister of William Wordsworth is Dorothy Wordsworth. What happens, you know, that one of the chief ingredients or one of the chief topics of this particular poem, you know, it's the time frame. As I've already mentioned, that it is the second journey that has been committed by William Wordsworth here, and ultimately he could identify what are the, you know, the basic importance of the first journey and how it actually helped him in these 5 years, and how he can identify, how he can feel that the present journey, the present experience will certainly help him in the days ahead. What happens, you know, that as we can identify here, as we can find here, that along with Wordsworth, here is another person's presence, and that is Dorothy, and somehow Dorothy is now at a particular state of mind that can be comparable with the earlier self of William Wordsworth. That means what William Wordsworth felt 5 years before, it can be said here that now Dorothy is feeling the same. So now Wordsworth is saying, or the speaker is saying, the poet is saying, that the day will come certainly when Dorothy will be of the same age as William Wordsworth now is. So therefore our day will certainly come when Dorothy will commit the second journey to this Tintern Abbey, and fundamentally here she will certainly think about this particular day, that is the present day, and she could feel the importance of this day's experience to her life also. It might be possible, as William Wordsworth is speaking, or the poet is speaking, that on that very day in future, when Dorothy will come or commit the second journey here, it might be possible that William Wordsworth, the poet, will no longer be, you know, alive at the time. It might be possible that he will be dead at the time, but he could feel, or she could feel at the time, that somehow that the present journey, how important it was to construct, to, you know, the particular identification of someone's own self and the transformation of the self. So everything that has been felt by the poet William Wordsworth, Wordsworth is saying that it might be possible that in future these will be felt by Dorothy. So that is why you will find certainly that the time orientation is being presented here. Just for example, what Wordsworth had felt in the past, now Dorothy is feeling in the present. What Wordsworth is feeling at the present, Dorothy will feel in the future. So therefore, the past, present, and future, the repetition of actions, the repetition of emotions, the repetition of the same orientation is being pointed out here. Now, here you will find that it will be discussed in the later part of this particular text, obviously. It begins in this particular fashion, nor perchance if I were not thus taught. So, as you can find, that it is the last stanza or last break of this particular poem. So therefore, in the previous one, in the previous section, there is an elongated, you know, discourse, an elongated description of the temperament of the poet, of the mindset of the poet, of the emotion of the poet. So it was a kind of a philosophical discourse that we have already discussed on. Now here the speaker says that not perchance, that means perchance means perhaps, you see, that not perhaps if I were not thus taught. That means it might be possible that I couldn't feel with my heart's extent the kind of feeling that is being originated within my mind, the kind of philosophical doctrine that was presented in me. If it were present, or it says that if I were not thus taught, that means I couldn't feel the basic essence that I have actually felt. If that would happen, should I the more suffer my genial spirits to decay? That means if I didn't have or might not have the kind of philosophy within, with the help of which I will not see into the life of things, then should I the more suffer my genial spirits to decay? Now this genial spirits to decay, the kind of spirit that is present within the poet, and it would be considered that no, I would not. It's a kind of a rhetorical question. Should I the more suffer my genial spirits to decay? So certainly the question is that I would not consider that it is not important for me. It was obviously important. Why it is important? Just because here, when Wordsworth is committing this particular journey to Tintern Abbey, at that very moment, there is the presence of Dorothy. And in the companionship of Dorothy, when Wordsworth is committing this particular journey, it is actually indicating that the journey becomes something pleasurable. So if it would happen that somehow Wordsworth didn't have that philosophical depth within, he couldn't feel that particular philosophical orientation within, but still, okay, Wordsworth would feel that particular journey to be important. Why? Because of the companionship of Dorothy Wordsworth, because the journey has been committed with the presence of Dorothy Wordsworth. So that is why it is also being considered to be important. So that's why he is speaking, for thou art with me here upon the banks of this fair river. You can identify that the fair river is actually referring to the river Uy, that has been always been pointed out in this particular poem. And it has been stated that for thou art, you can identify it as an archaic word or archaic a kind of lexicons that have been used by him. Thou means you, art means are. That means for you are with me here. That means that is why the presence of Dorothy Wordsworth is always very significant and always very important for William Wordsworth here. So therefore he says, for you are with me here upon the banks of this fair river. You, thou, my dearest friend, my dear, dear friend, and in thy voice I catch the language of my former heart. So that is the thing that I was trying to discuss. You see what it means, say that in thy voice I catch the language of my former heart. That means what I had felt 5 years before, I can feel the basic essence of that particular temperament is present now in the present instant. That means it is in you at this very moment. That actually indicates that what Wordsworth felt 5 years before, now he can identify the same essence, the same emotion, the same kind of temperament is present within Dorothy at this particular moment. So that's why he says that in thy voice, I catch the language of my former heart and read my former pleasures in the shooting lights of thy wild eyes. So ultimately, the shooting lights of wild eyes, again, we can identify that the basic temperament of the poet is actually indicating the first phase of mind, remember. The typical term, the term wild is actually incorporating the basic essence of the typical formations of wild animalistic movements that have been described to represent the first phase of the poet's psyche. So that's why it says, remember the reference of the deer when he considered that just like a deer, I was just running among the hills and mountains. Okay, the glad animal movements, remember? So the same thing is being referred to here. It says that my dear, dear friend, and my voice, in thy voice, I catch the language of my former heart and read my former pleasures that actually I had felt 5 years before in the shooting lights of thy wild eyes. That means in your eyes, in your lookings, and in your temperament, I could feel the same essence that I had felt 5 years before. Oh, yet a little while may I behold in thee what I was once. So as I have already mentioned, the time frame is being in work. What Wordsworth felt, now it is being felt by Dorothy Wordsworth. So generally, now Wordsworth, in Dorothy, William Wordsworth can feel his own past, can see his own past. So therefore, he is stating, oh, yet a little while, may I behold, may I see in thee what I was once, my dear, dear sister. So ultimately, you are resembling my own past. So therefore, in you, I can feel the basic essences of my own past feelings and temperament. He says, therefore, oh, yet a while, a little while, may I behold in thee what I was once, my dear, dear sister. And this prayer I make, I am making a prayer. I am praying, knowing that nature never did betray the heart that loved her. Can you find the basic essence? Can you find here the basic temperament of the poet? As I have already discussed, as I have already mentioned, that here in this particular poem, we can identify why William Wordsworth considered himself as a worshipper of nature. We have already discussed this particular form, that in nature, in each and every part of nature, William Wordsworth can feel the basic essences of spirituality. Ultimately, all these have been discussed in our last day. Okay, so here he says that may I behold in thee what I was once, my dear, dear sister. And this prayer I make, knowing that nature never did betray the heart that loved her. So here is the basic essence. So ultimately, betrayal is the possibilities, betrayal is the matters with the human beings alone. The person who actually loves, the true love for nature is there, and ultimately that particular form of betrayal cannot be. So therefore, you will find that somehow the particular formation of prayer that William Wordsworth is speaking here, I am praying, I make knowing that nature never did betray the heart that loved her. In that particular orientation, in this particular use of the phrase, we can identify that Wordsworth is providing us the basic importance or basic information relating to his own psyche, his own temperament, why he is the worshipper of nature. Towards the last part of this particular poem, you will find that the worshipper of nature, this particular term, this particular phrase will be used by William Wordsworth here. So therefore he says, and this prayer I make, knowing that nature never did betray the heart that loved her. It is her privilege through all the years of this our life to lead from joy to joy. Remember the typical pantheistic philosophy, as I have already discussed in my last lectures, the typical pantheistic orientations that actually provides that somehow in each and every part of nature, in everything, we can feel the glimpse of the divinity. We can feel the glimpse of something spiritual. So therefore, it has been pointed out, it is her privilege, it is nature's privilege through all the years of this our life, that means the time span of our life, to lead from joy to joy. That means you are well connected with nature. If you can feel the basic essence of spiritualism being present in every part of nature, then ultimately you will feel the certain eternal joy that is very significant, and that will obviously influence you to think, to sacrifice the particular formations of life that is completely being surrounded by earthly materialistic anchorings. That is the spiritual awakening that Wordsworth was speaking after. So therefore he says, it is nature's privilege through all the years of this our life to lead from joy to joy. And now it is also being reciprocated in terms of the Dorothy Wordsworth. He says, for she can so inform the mind that is within us. Okay, so somehow what is being felt by William Wordsworth, you will find the similar kind of orientation can be felt in the Dorothy too. Nature can so inform the mind that is within us. Here she, her, all these terms are represented in terms of nature itself. For nature can so inform the mind. Inform, remember, it can construct. It is not the kind of information simply, but it is a kind of a punning being incorporated, where the construction is being always being in focus. For nature can so inform the mind, it can provide the information to the mind, and also it can structure the mind that is within us. It can impress with quietness and beauty. The particular formations, the quietness, at the very beginning we have already discussed about the matters with the silence, quietness, poise, a poising mind, calmness, the steep and lofty cliffs, remember? The particular reference to the quietness, the particular reference to the natural beauty. It can impress us. It can influence our mind that is within us. It can construct our mind that is within us. The particular kind of mind that is being at the focus. This mind is obviously something different, completely, different from the materialistic, material influenced mind. So therefore it has been stated, for she can so inform the mind that is within us, so impressed with quietness and beauty, and so feed with lofty thoughts. Now remember, what is the lofty thoughts? What are the lofty thoughts? The lofty thoughts are referring to the thinking in terms of spiritualism, the spiritual thoughts. When you will be completely awakened with such kind of spiritual awakening and something, nothing can reach you, nothing can touch you. The material life, the materialistic hankerings, the money-mindedness, the earthly representations of everything, the sensual lives and sensual activities, nothing can reach you, nothing can touch you, because you have such a mind, because you have such lofty thoughts, because you have such spiritual awakening within your mind. It has always been pointed out throughout this particular poem that when we will be a living soul within, when we can negate the possibilities of physicality that is within us, then we'll be completely free from the materialistic affectations. So that's why he says that when the lofty thoughts are within, when you can feel the basic essences of nature, when you can feel the basic essences of pantheism, the essential quietness, the essential beauty, the essential lofty thoughts that are within us, when these are present within us, neither evil tongues, rash judgments, nor the sneers of selfish men, nor greetings where no kindness is, nor all the dreary intercourse of our daily life shall ever prevail against us. So these are referring to the fevers and frets of life, you see. Whenever we are within this society, whenever we are within this particular materialistic affectations and earthly life leading, we can find different forms of affectations are in front of us. These are continuously attacking us. These are continuously creating wounds to our heart. Whether it is the evil tongues that people are using against you, whether it is the matter with the rash judgments, the wrong judgments on something, when it is the matter with the sneers of selfish men, that is the typical formations of selfish desires within the human beings in general, not the kind of greetings that people greet you with, where there is no particular form of kindness, or maybe the dreary intercourse of daily life. That means the monotonous materialistic hankerings, the fever and fret of life, remember. All these are actually always, they are sucking the life force from the human beings. But if you are a living soul, if you can feel the lofty thoughts within, these cannot reach you, these cannot touch you. So that's why it says that if it is being fed with the lofty thoughts, neither evil tongues, rash judgments, nor the sneers of selfish men, nor greetings where no kindness is, nor all the dreary intercourse of daily life shall ever prevail against us. They cannot come in front of us. They cannot disturb our cheerful faith. The kind of faith that is within us, they cannot disturb it. That all which we behold is full of blessings. Remember, the particular form of wisdom is being pointed out here. If you consider, if you think in terms of the wise persons ahead, then you will find that somehow they are not being touched by the material affectations. They are not being touched by any particular negativities of life. They are always positive. They are always thinking in terms of the positive impressions of life. They can feel the essential blessings that are present within everything. That is the cheerful faith you see. So ultimately, here you will find everything is full of blessings. That is the ultimatum. That is the fundamental realization that one can gather. If such a kind of solace, if such a kind of wisdom is present in one person, then he used to be considered as a wise man. He is to be considered as a person who is completely free from these materialistic problems, from the sneers of the selfishnesses, from the problems of the earthly affectations. Such a thing is being oriented here. Therefore, so after this particular reference, after this particular justification, why he is like that, okay, it's a kind of a philosophy that he is preaching. It is a kind of a teaching that he is providing to us. And then he says, therefore, let the moon shine on thee in thy solitary work. So ultimately you can identify it is referring to Dorothy. It says, therefore, let the moon shine on thee in thy solitary work. So when you are walking in a solitary situation, when the moonlit night and the moonlight is providing you or shining on thee, and let the misty mountain winds be free to blow against you. So you can identify it is the opulence of nature being incorporated. I have already referred that whenever we are dealing with the typical romantic literature, whenever we describe the typical orientations of romanticism in literature, we find that the imagination actually jades the poet into a particular place, a kind of a make-believe world, which is completely free from the material affectations, which are completely free from the fever and fret of life, which are completely free from the earthly hankerings and something. So a kind of world that provides you the essential peace, the essential quietness. So that is why the opulence, the maximum presence of the beauty is being described here. It is the addition of strangeness to beauty that have been pointed out here. So let the misty mountain winds be free to blow against you. Let the moon shine on thee in thy solitary work. Okay? So therefore it says to blow against thee, and in after years, remember, that means it is now indicating towards the particular time which is now being felt by William Wordsworth and which will be felt by Dorothy Wordsworth in future. So that is why after years. So and in after years, when these wild ecstasies, remember this is referring to the first phase, shall be matured into a sober pleasure. So now it is referring to a third stage. The matured part. So the wild ecstasies, that is the glad animal movements, shall be matured into sober pleasure, where the mind is being associated. When thy mind shall be a mansion for all lovely forms, thy memory be as a dwelling place of all sweet sounds and harmonies. Reference of this harmony is being oriented again. The particular reference to harmony that have been referred and pointed out by William Wordsworth, referring to his third stage. And now here you will find that same orientation being incorporated in terms of the future temperament of Dorothy Wordsworth. So that's why it says the wild ecstasies will be matured into sober pleasure, the transformation. When thy mind shall be a mansion of all lovely forms, remember, the lovely forms are actually representing the natural delicacies. When you will feel the basic essence of life, thy memory be as a dwelling place, a place for all sweet sounds and harmonies. Oh, then that means it is referring to the future of Dorothy, when Wordsworth will no longer be, he will be capable of of listening to the words of Dorothy probably. He's considering that probably on that very day, I will no longer be alive. So therefore he says, oh then, if solitude or fear or pain or grief, these are the fever and fate of life, remember? So these should be thy portion. It might be possible that in future, when you will feel the basic essence of revisiting this particular place, you will be completely torn in your life. Might be there is a particular form of solitude, it might be fear, it might be pain, it might be grief. It should be thy portion. So then, with what healing thoughts, remember, the particular experience that they are gathering at this very moment, they consider that this basic essence, that this particular remembrance will be just like the healing thoughts. It will heal the wounds. So therefore he says, oh then, if solitude or fear or pain or grief should be thy portion, with what healing thoughts of tender joy will thou remember me? So at that very moment, you will remember me with these experiences, with these remembrances, with my presence. And you will remember this one, this particular journey. You will remember myself or me. And at the same time, you will remember my exhortations, my advices. It might be possible, not perchance, if I should be where I no more can hear thy voice. So it might be possible that on that very day, when you will try to remember these days and so, it might be possible that I will be dead at the time. I will not be able to hear thy voice at the time. Nor I will be able to catch from thy wild eyes these gleams of past existence. It is not possible for me because I will be dead at the time. It might be possible. So nor perhaps if I should be where I no more can hear thy voice, nor catch from thy wild eyes these gleams of past existence, wilt thou then forget? So just because I was not present, I will not be present with you, wilt thou then forget that on the banks of this delightful stream we stood together? Wilt thou then forget the present situation? Wilt thou then forget the present experience that we shared? We stood together beside the river Wye and in the Stinton Abbey. And that will thou then forget that? So it's a rhetorical question. Ultimately the answer is no. And that so long a worshipper of nature, remember, so ultimately I have just mentioned that the worshipper of nature, this particular phrase has been referred to directly in this particular poem by William Wordsworth here. He says, therefore, wilt thou then forget that on the banks of this delightful stream, we stood together, and that so long a worshipper of nature, here came, unwearied in that service. The service is worshipping nature. I was unwearied. Rather say, with warmer love. Oh, with far deeper zeal of holier love. Now, if you think about the warmer love, then it is referring to the second stage. And if you think in terms of the deeper zeal of holier love, then it is obviously associating something spiritual, that is holier. So it is indicating towards the third stage. So that's why when he is stating that he is the worshipper of nature, you have to keep it in mind that ultimately it is also indicating that he became, the kind of a transformation had occurred in him. Whether it is the warmer love, that is the heartfelt emotions and something, and then it is associated in terms of something spiritual. So therefore, the deeper zeal of holier love, that is something spiritual awakening and so. Nor wilt thou then forget. So now it is deliberately being located. It is not a kind of a question. Rather, it is a kind of a statement. That's why I have already mentioned that kind of a rhetorical orientation is there. The answer is being provided with it. Nor wilt thou then forget that after many wanderings, movements, many years of absence, the long 5 years, these steep woods and lofty cliffs, I have already mentioned about them at the very beginning, and this green pastoral landscape were to me more dear, both for themselves, that is because of the spiritual awakening and something related to the nature itself, and for thy sake. That means it was lovelier, It was very much, nearer to me. I felt the basic essence of all this journey as something important and something precious, for two reasons. One, for their sake, that means as it is nature and we can feel the basic glimpse of spiritualism in nature, and I am the worshipper of nature. And the second one is that you are present with me, that is for thy sake, because the companionship is always very important for me. So that is the fundamental thing. With the circular process, circular orientation, you can find that William Wordsworth is ending this particular poem by referring to the first lines actually. That's why the reference of the steep woods and lofty cliffs and pastoral landscapes and something. The orientation becomes circular therefore. So with that particular reference, Wordsworth has come to an end actually to this particular poem. So up to this, any question? Question থাকলে বলো
স্যার এই লাইনটা একটু বলুন তো, therefore let the moon shine on thee in thy solitary walk.
হ্যাঁ, মানে এখানে দেখো যেটা বলছে যে মানে অ্যাকচুয়ালি দিস আর যে বলছে না যে ফুল অফ ব্লেসিংস, সেখানে বলছে নেচার যেন ওকে ব্লেস করবে। মানে এখানে দি মানে কিন্তু তোমার ডরথি ওয়ার্ডসওয়ার্থ, মানে তুমি যখন একা একা হাঁটবে যেন মন তার আলো দিয়ে তোমাকে রাস্তাটাকে সাজিয়ে রাখে, যেন মাউন্টেন উইন্ডস গুলো ফ্রি ওয়েতে তোমার এগেইনস্টে ব্লো করে, মানে তোমার ব্রিজেস গুলো যেন আসে, মানে যত রকমের ভালো লাগাগুলো রয়েছে ন্যাচারাল, সেগুলো যেন তোমার ক্ষেত্রেও ঘটে, যেটা আমার ক্ষেত্রে ঘটেছে।
সলিটারি ওয়াক বলেছে কেন?
পরবর্তীকালের কথা বলছে।
আচ্ছা,
সত্যি কথা বলতে কি যে যখন তুমি ধরো তুমি কারোর সঙ্গে কম্পেনিয়ন নিয়েই হয়তো তুমি কোথাও যাচ্ছ, কিন্তু যখন তুমি পিওরলি নেচারকে ফিল করতে যাবে তখন তুমি তো কথা বলতে বলতে কাজটা করো না। তখন তুমি হয়তো সঙ্গে কারোর সঙ্গে থাকো কিন্তু তুমি একা মানে সলিটারি ওয়াকই করো আর কি, লিটারালি when you are trying to gather the basic elements of nature. আর কোনো কোয়েরি? Do you have any query? আমি বলেছিলাম না যে এই পার্টটা করতে বেশি সময় লাগবে না, কারণ এখানে জটিলতা খুব বেশি নেই, যা হওয়ার হয়ে গেছে আগে। Anything? Do you have anything to ask? একবার দেখে নাও টেক্সটটা, যদি কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকে। Take your time.
স্যার ওই 142 লাইনে ফর অল সুইট সাউন্ড অ্যান্ড হারমোনিস, ওই সাউন্ডটা কি সে নেচারের সাউন্ড?
হ্যাঁ অবশ্যই তাই। অ্যাকচুয়ালি
আর
হারমোনিটা, হ্যাঁ হারমোনিটা ম্যাটার করে, জানো তো। মানে ধরো আমরা প্রথম থেকে কবিতাটা পড়তে গিয়ে কিন্তু হারমোনির কথা পেয়েছিলাম, যে আমি তো বললাম যে ডিফারেন্ট কাইন্ডস অফ সোলস আর দেয়ার, whether it is the human being soul or whether it is the soul of nature, and ultimately when you will be awakened spiritually, then ultimately you will feel that in everything there is the presence of God. So therefore nothing is actually different, you can feel the harmonies, সবকিছুর মধ্যে একটা যেন একটা অসাধারণ একটা হারমোনি চলছে, তুমি সেটা বুঝতে পারবে, সেটাকেই বলছে আর ঠিক আছে। আর কারো কোনো কোয়ারি? তোমাদের আমি অনলাইন কি কি পড়ালাম? ব্লেক পড়ালাম আর প্রিন্টানামি পড়ালাম, এই দুটোই তো না?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
হ্যাঁ
এগুলো সব দিতে হবে।
ব্লেকের দুখানা দেওয়া গেছে, আর একটা বাকি আছে, আর এই প্রিন্টানামির আজকে নিয়ে বোধহয় চারটে মতো।
প্রিন্টানামি 3টে ক্লাস 4টে, প্রথম দিকটা মনে হয় ওই মানে ওভারঅল বলেছিলাম মনে হয় না?
না স্যার, এই ফার্স্টের দিনটা আপনি ওই চিমনি সুইপারের সাথে ওয়ার্ডসওয়ার্থকে ইন্ট্রোডিউস করেছিল।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, টেক্সট পড়ানো হচ্ছে 3 দিন, তাই না?
হ্যাঁ, এইটা 3 দিন, আর তার আগে এই চিমনি সুইপারের একটা আছে, সং অফ এক্সপিরিয়েন্সের চিমনি সুইপার।
ওকে ওকে, ঠিক আছে। কি তাহলে কারো কোনো কোয়ারি নেই? আচ্ছা, এর থেকে টপিক বলেছি? কোশ্চেন বলেছিলাম?
হ্যাঁ স্যার বলে দিয়েছেন।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, তাহলে আজকে টানছি না বেশি, আজকে তাড়াতাড়ি ছুটি। শোনো, ঘটনাটা হচ্ছে সামনের দিন তাহলে আমরা ইউলিসিস পড়বো, হ্যাঁ?
ওকে স্যার।
ইউলিসিসটা আছে তোমাদের পেপার 10-এ, সিসি 10-এ ইউলিসিস।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ।